It's the Justin Palmer Show. Here we go. Woo!
Here we are again.
Good to see you, my man.
Likewise. What's new these days?
Getting back into shape a little bit. That's big on the agenda. But different than like 10 years ago, my entire body hurts every day. You know, like my neck and my like everything hurts because I'm still doing like barbell stuff and lifting weights and squats and cleans and stuff like that. And I feel great when I'm at the gym, and then afterwards it's just like laying in bed and everything hurts. So I've been using a lot of CBD, but I'm not 100% sure it's doing anything. So because it's just like, and I'm fine with it just hurting and working through it, because at some point, if you're gonna load up weight and be in the gym and you're gonna be in your 40s, you're just gonna have some things that nag a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
But as long as but I try to do a bunch of mobility and stretching and warming up before I put any big load on the bar, and so that that way I don't get injured, so that, because that would be a disaster at this point. But other than that, just like the really top performers, the way that you really get everything else in your life in order is you start with being physically in good shape.
Yeah, 100%, dude.
Yeah, you're physically in good shape, you feel good, and you're getting good rest, and you're getting hydration. And then a lot of other things just seem to start falling in line. And that's kind of what we're experiencing now,
I mean, that's kind of the story of 2020 for you, right? In a lot of ways.
Yeah, it seems like so long ago when we started this lockdown. And in California now, which is a lockdown again, it doesn't look like there's an end in sight. But we, over that period of time, which is damn near a year now, have reinvented ourselves and the business and our careers to where now I think we're better off now than we ever have been since we've been together, Maggie and I.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man.
And some of that is because the shutdown forces you to really think about the decisions that you've made. And a lot of people are obviously talking about this topic and thinking about it, is that now you close the doors of your own house and you don't have any options about where to go. All the things that you have acquired, the people around you, your family in particular, the stuff that you decided to buy, the career that you got, you're stuck with that shit now. And it is all too obvious when there are no options available. And to some people, that's a miserable place to be. But for us, we're of course comfortable with all those decisions, but we also adopt the policy of that, hey, if we're not happy with any of the stuff, we'll change it. We don't have any attachment to any of these things. We'll change it immediately. So we changed up a lot. We got rid of a bunch of stuff. We had a physical storefront. We closed that physical storefront and went totally virtual with the digital product. Basically started the entire company over again. Maggie had a baby through this process, last October, and the shutdown started when our son was just 5 months old, and she's lost almost 15 pounds now.
Wow.
During the shutdown, and started to get back into swimming pool. She swam at college, and she did that through swimming and diet. We went full keto, and I went the opposite direction for some reason. I was kind of out of shape in the beginning of the year, around 216, 217, but really in kind of like a soft midsection kind of place. Now I'm clocking in at like 225, and I can't really do anything about it. And my diet is in pretty good shape, but I've got I feel strong and I feel great. And and it hasn't just been like under the weights. Even though like I'm very happy about a 250-pound power clean. In your 40s, for me to be able to do that at my, for where I am, I feel very good about that. And I clocked down a 67-second quarter mile a couple of days back. So, so before I wouldn't have been be able to complete a quarter mile at full tilt,
Yeah.
But and that wasn't even on a flat track. That had a little uphill section to it. So, so like taking care of that, taking care of the body, getting in good shape. When you start seeing yourself in the mirror and you start seeing a result there, you just start doubling down and you're like, well, shit, I could, I like being in shape. I'm going to invest more into this area. And then naturally what happened is the results in the business started to come, and then results in, in my own, the company that I'm with right now, the results there are obviously coming fast and aggressively. And so then it's like, well, you start pushing the envelope. What else? What's next? So that's when it's like, okay, well, I need to be 100% available at all times. So I haven't drank in like 90 days. And when I wake up now, I wake up at like 7:30 and I'm just like, boing, and just ready to fucking go through the business. My testosterone is like fucking off the scales. And it's just it's a great thing to feel great every day,
Yeah.
And we touched on this a little earlier. It's weird because there's also some guilt that came with that too. There's some guilt and a little bit of shame that came with it about how much time over the past couple of years I wasted being drunk and hungover. Which by no means was I like some kind of alcoholic. I don't think, anyways.
I don't think you were either.
Yeah, we drank for recreation and entertainment 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah.
A couple of times a week, maybe. One of those times might have been, like an aggressive drink over the weekend.
Right.
But
right.
If you're doing that a couple of times a week, what it kind of does is you're like at most 80% at any given time, because now the hangover is like 2 days long. The next day is fucked. The day after that, you're still not quite there. Third day, you're kind of back to normal. And then the fourth day, you're like, oh, well, shit, I could have another drink. You know what I mean? So
I need to fill that in with like chicken fingers and cheeseburgers. Like day one is like chicken fingers and fries, something nice and light, just so I clear the system.
Yeah, so like those 48 hours after you drink, you're making fucking terrible decisions.
Right.
Staying in bed, eating like shit, and you don't feel particularly good. You're just not, and it's also not the kind of person to take on the kind of challenges that we have taken on with the business and the customers that we want to serve and the best that we can do for them. So that was out the window. And now I feel great. And I feel like I can wake up at 7 and then I put in a couple of hours of work. I can play with the kids. And then I have like, like some eggs and avocado for lunch, and then go work out, and then come back and do another 3-4 hours of calls, and then be at 5, hang out with the kids, cook dinner. And then at 9:30, I'm out like a light.
Totally. Yeah.
And it's a fantastic use of a day.
That's an incredible day.
But then one of the things is I think about a year ago or a year and a half ago and feel a little guilty about not doing that with the kids and with the company, really mostly with the kids, the time that I, wasn't 100% available. And I could have been, but I wasn't, because I had these other things that I was, these other distractions that I was doing. But I just got to like process through that guilt, and focus on the time now rather than kind of look back at, my inadequacy in the past,
Mm-hmm.
So those weird kind of scenarios that come up even when you're doing well. You think, man, now that I feel this great, I really wish I would have made these decisions earlier.
Mm.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, I can relate to that and understand it for sure. I mean, as you know, this is like my second year of basically no drinking, right? Out of a choice of like the same as you, what we were talking about before we started recording, where I just felt like shit afterward, you know, like I would feel, and I'm like, dude, do I want to sacrifice 2 days for, you know, cutting loose a little bit? Not really, you know? And then once you start doing it, you're like, oh man, I feel amazing. I'm like going to sleep early. I'm up early. I'm getting a good night's sleep. I'm like playing all out on everything. Yeah. And I think, it kind of made me realize like how much is created within. And that's a very generalized statement, but I see it in everything now. I see it in every part of my life, right? And I would challenge you with a question of like, if you were looking at not working out, I wish I would have done this yesterday or 2 weeks ago or whatever. Would you even give a fuck? No, right? You just get in and go. And I think like that, letting go of all of your past. Like I read something recently by, I think his name's Carlos Castaneda. He documented, he was like an anthropologist who documented conversations with I believe the pronunciation is a Jackie Indian in Arizona. And there's all this like scandal around it now that he's passed away. That like, people are saying that it's like completely made up and like all this stuff. He wrote like 12 books. And I was reading one of them because I get like a sample on my Kindle before I buy it and just see if it's like something I'm interested in. And the guy that he met, it was like he's supposed to be like a jockey shaman. And the guy's like, he's documenting this incredibly frustrating conversation. This guy's an academic and he's trying to interview about like the cultural shamanistic secrets of their culture, of this indigenous culture. And the guy is giving him answers like, you have to create fog around yourself because how can anyone know who you are if you don't know who you are? Right. And the guy, he's like, what are you talking about? Like, he's like, what, this part of it, he's like, what did you call your mother? And he's like, mama. He's like, what did you call your father? He's trying to fill out a chart for like the lineage. And the guy's like, daddy. And he's like, did you call them anything else? And he would say, hey, mama. And the guy's like, if you're living in someone else's world, you can't ever process your own reality. You know what I mean? And the reason why I'm bringing it up, I know it sounds kind of out there. For me, it kind of connected with like everything is created within. When you're in someone else's reality, including your spouse or your kids, you feel the expectations of how you should be in that experience. It's not anyone else that's experiencing that, right? It's you.
Yeah.
So if that's true and you believe that you can change the way that you feel, then you can create anything that you want out of any scenario. And that's what it sounds like you're in the early phases of peeling back those layers on pure creation. Right?
Yeah. And I guess that one of the things that's surprising me, which is a weird thing to say, is that my own desire to make things harder than they need to be, and my desire to not to feel pressure, and in some cases to even feel dissatisfaction about where things are, which at its root is a way for you to create even friction in your own life because you have the need to feel bad about the way things are. I don't think that, I'm not sure exactly if I'm describing it correctly, but that that the idea that in the past my personality was one that was comfortable only if it was uncomfortable,
Hmm.
you know, or at least not comfortable, um, um, but at least uh, the desire to be in that discomfort was where I felt like I wanted to be or needed to be. And now that it's not that where it's not uncomfortable, where we have the space to create and the space to grow without you know without all that friction, that there's something oddly disappointing, you know, about that. And that's a weird place to be. It's a weird place to be like, the real problem is that we don't have any problems, you know? And, you know,
So
because,
I'm just laughing at the irony in that, you know?
well, I think that problems do a few things. It puts guys like me to use. It makes me feel useful, and it makes the masculine energy feel empowered as well, because it gives the masculine a reason to do shit like solve these big problems. When there isn't a problem to be solved like that, then you have to search for a different type of meaning, you know. And I think that type of meaning has to go back to the why of greater contribution. And if that is really not crystal clear, I think you run the risk of manufacturing a new problem so then you can feel useful about yourself, you know? Or
Yeah.
you can feel somehow needed, or somehow your masculine can get recharged, because if there's no problem for you to fix, then how useful are you?
Hmm.
And I think that and I think that awareness of such a thing is going to prevent us from falling back into that cycle. I think that this is a cycle that I've been in. That as soon as things got really comfortable, that I nuked it, because it's like, how am I going to really be who I am if there's not some disaster that I get to fix?
Yeah.
But now that we're like starting this new phase of, hey, we've got it kind of figured out now, for at least the time being. How do I not blow this up so I can satisfy this, like, this past identity that where I need to be this problem solver, and just remain in this flow state and get back to the core why of it in growing where we are today, so I can really be the kind of person that is able to contribute and give back a lot, instead of just serving this like old ego, that makes me feel better about myself because I'm a good problem solver. So that I think that's kind of the personal evolution out of this entire thing, which is going from almost in a way wanting problems and disasters around me because I feel super useful in those scenarios, to where now, uh, you know, working towards really a growth mission and a development and contribution mission, when things are relatively comfortable and flowing really well, and still finding, you know, inner peace with, with like my own ego and my own identity, despite that there's no disaster to fix. So that's kind of the state, and I'm glad we're having this conversation, because I think that I think putting it out there is the first step into identifying that, hey, I don't want to be manufacturing a problem at this point just so I can feel useful, you know,
Right. Right.
about going back and fixing it. And I think we got to be, really. I think that talking about it out loud is making me hyper aware of that kind of thing, and just kind of being in more of a flow scenario and just kind of enjoying the moment that we're in and the ride that we're in without there having to be a problem,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I definitely get that. I had an interesting conversation with my wife this week. I've been I feel like I've processed most of that stuff kind of either early when we got out here to Hawaii from New York, or even maybe even at the end of last year. And I think being out here in nature, right? I spend a lot of time outside, a lot of time just like staring at the ocean and like staring at the stars at night, you know, when the kids go to bed. And I'm finding a very deep connection with the universe right now. And one thing that I was experiencing is I can feel like resistance in people that I'm around, right? I feel it. And I'm not saying I know everything. I sense it, right? And I've always had that ability for as long as I can remember. And I could sense some stuff going on with Anna. And I'm like, look, what's going on? And she's like, nothing. And we had this discussion late on, like, I don't know if it was like Friday or Saturday. And I'm like, look, what I can sense fear. Mm-hmm. Right. But I can't help you with it because you're the only one that can help yourself. Right. I can point out things that I observe or that I sense, but you know, I think it's helpful if we have that conversation.
Was she afraid of something? What was? Yeah.
Deep. Like basically boiled down to, she was afraid of losing me. Like if something happens to me, you know, she's all alone. Right.
Yeah.
And all the things that I do, right? Like, you know, I'm in charge of finance and security and logistics. You know, I take the kids to school and like all this stuff, right? I go get groceries. Like I do, you know, that's my current contribution to the family. And she just felt extremely vulnerable from that. And I think at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you're afraid of. It's the fact that you're letting fear run a part of your experience, right? And that, whatever that is, it can be a little thing or a big thing, right? But if you don't face it down, for me, like we've talked about it ad nauseum, right? For me, it was the growing up without my dad thing and not facing that down, not looking in the mirror and saying like, what the fuck is going on, right? Mm-hmm. And when everybody has different things, and as you start to face down that fear, your entire experience changes. The entire universe changes for you. And it's really uncomfortable, right? It can be really uncomfortable to let go, to truly let go of your fear or your deepest fear, right? And it sounds like some of what you're doing is kind of like that letting go of the old self. It's just fear, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that some of that fear is rooted in, kind of that a similar thing, which is, you know, in Anna's case, it's what am I going to do if I don't have you? And in my case, it's what am I going to do when I don't have these big problems around me that make me feel useful when I'm solving them? And I think that both of those are really at this high amount of uncertainty, you know, and really threatening to the core of your own identity, your own picture of yourself.
Yeah.
That no wonder we've avoided kind of thinking about those things because, you know, just like you mentioned, they're tough to think about. But you know, but that I think that there's something in order for, you know, us to move forward, just like you mentioned, or even experience today, um, can't spend too many cycles thinking about that stuff. It bogs you down, you know?
Totally. It
So
will
yeah, that's
absorb
kind of
all your energy, right?
right.
It absorbs your energy, and then it takes away from where you can use your energy in other places,
Yeah.
right? And it's okay, but
Yeah.
it's also okay to experience that, right? Because I think part of the process is like you just have to find a way to make peace with it. If you find the acceptance in it, if you find the nugget of how valuable that is for you to experience that, then you can find the balance in it, right? And part
Right.
of what it sounds also like, as men, as fathers, moving in, some of us are in our 40s, some of us are rapidly approaching, right? It, you move into a different phase in life, right? You kind of, it almost seems like overnight you become the wise old man, but you're not really prepared for it and you kind of struggle with it. And you're like, I'm not sure if I'm ready for that, because your kids, you're guiding them, right? And you become
Yeah.
the rock for your family in a lot of ways, right?
Right.
And I've just processed that on a really deep level on like the creation within. We both went through the same kind of philosophical training through like Tony and with Steve G. Shout out to Steve G, man. Where you do all these things to maintain a state, right? And I feel like I've transcended that in a lot of ways where I don't need to do anything and I maintain that state. And it's not going away because I recognize that always exists. It always exists in every human at all times, right? That's part of the beauty of our civilization and our experience. People can take that to the negative, and many people do, especially when we get in large groups. I think finding comfort in that, it changes your whole experience. It's changed mine fundamentally. Where like I don't see problems anymore, right? I don't experience that. And even in the moments, I'm not saying that I don't experience frustration. I do, but the next minute it's gone. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think about that a lot too, because I think about, man, if I just knew a year or two ago what I know today, then how much I would have saved, how much time I would have saved, effort, how many better days I would have had, how much better I would have felt, and how much money I would have saved. It would just be unbelievable. But yes,
But who gives a fuck?
It's a moot,
right?
Right. Yeah, and in some cases, I don't think I get bogged down from it, but I guess it's natural to look back and say, man, if I could just redo some of those decisions, I'm not sure that's even fair. I'm not sure I would change anything because those decisions is what really arrived to today. Um, I'm just wondering if it had to come at such a high price. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you can redo those. You can redo them right now. Right.
And
you can
exactly.
You are redoing them right now. And you have the tuition has been paid and you are in the now, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's to me, I think that's an unavoidable fact is that you got to pay into this system somehow, and and now that I put in the time and the hours, now I feel like I deserve it. Like the outcomes that we get and we've got in our planning. Now I feel like I deserve that. I did the work, and we put in the hours, and now we're succeeding in winter, as they call it. And when spring comes, I think that this is just going to turn into this giant snowball, and it's going to be bittersweet when that happens, I think. because there'll be I think an overwhelming amount of success that we were hoping for from the beginning, but no longer the struggle of trying to make it work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's something honest and genuine about the struggle of starting a locomotive, and then when it's when it's going at full speed, in a way, you kind of there's it's a whole different set of issues and a whole different set of problems, and in a way, you still kind of like think about those good old days, even though the good old days were kind of tough, but the good old days being the creation side of it, So, but the creation side of it, at some point, you can't be in creator mode forever.
Why not?
Right? Or can you?
Why not?
Yeah.
I mean, what do you mean? What do you mean by creator mode? I mean, I think I don't know why you couldn't. I think life is creation.
Yeah. So let's get down to the specific example of the business itself, right?
Right.
And your business is about creating content, so it's a little bit more obvious. And we're running basically a goods business, a G&A business, and so there's something exotic about creating it from nothing. That before there was this company, there was no one doing this and nothing here, and there was no product. And that went from nothing into this invention that essentially we had, and then it turned into a company. Now the company has customers and revenue and the whole thing. And there's not much creation that's left. Now it's execution, and it's repeating the thing that works and doing that 10 million more times. And the part of like where there was nothing and then turning that into a thing, for right now, that part is over for the foreseeable future, because we built it. Now it's built and it works. And now it's time to put gas in the engine and have it going down the road. So, so those are two kind of distinctly different phases of the business's life cycle. And there's something beautiful about it getting to the point where it's making enough money to where, we're like buying shit from the company is like, having a draw that we're taking out. And that is a beautiful thing, to have taken something from absolutely nothing to creating wealth in the market, where dollars are coming into our account for doing a thing that we literally made up a few months ago. It gives me hope that there's ability for wealth creation for everybody, because you literally 6 months ago, none of this existed. Mm-hmm. And with just like a little bit of elbow grease, now all of a sudden there's money out of nothing, out of thin air. We didn't have customers. We didn't know anybody. We didn't have a product. We didn't have any of that shit, and now with that being said, that I guess the wonderment of the invention cycle is now over, and that being that being part of the past, I think that there's now I'm kind of feeling the itch to start to create something else again. Mm-hmm. I want to be in that mode that well, there's nothing here, and now I want there to be something there. So even now, it's like, once it's motion and it's in execution mode, the next thing I want to do is like, okay, what else can I make?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When that's not the right service action to have on the business right now. The business needs to execute. So
sure, but there's constantly creation involved through the process, right? Sure. Certainly it's no longer just an idea or a thought, right? You've created reality.
Yeah.
In your experience, but the creation doesn't end there, right? Unless that's all you're looking for out of that business, right? The creation continues. It just changes in the specifics of it, but it's all, I don't know, man. I found a lot of peace in just understanding the connection of all things, that everything is one, everything really is one. It comes, that message comes to different people at different times. It's crystal clear to me, right? That struggle is the same thing as the stabilization and execution.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
all the same thing.
Isn't there that theory about like people who are artists versus people who kind of like maximizers? For example, I like blank canvas to and taking a blank canvas and then that turning into a thing versus being handed a thing and then finding like little tweaks to make that thing better, or taking that thing and making sure that it grows. For example, like, where's your head on what are your thoughts on that kind of thing? Because to me, and I'm not convinced about this by any means, but I love that idea that there is nothing and now there's something.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah. I can totally resonate with that because for most of my life, felt very similar to you, right? Like I love the challenge of taking something that people would say is like, it's not possible, it's not going to happen, and then finding a way to do it. And I've just realized in my experience, right? I can only speak from my experience because everybody's experience is different, that those are just preferences. I don't need anything to happen in my day to see the beauty in life, right? I don't need these things to happen in a particular way, right? I mean, sometimes in the mornings when I take my kids to school, they're like the fucking little elves from Snow White and they're like whistling while they work. And sometimes it's like they're laying on the floor screaming, right?
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is. They're learning how to process their own emotions. But if I get dragged into that, then that's the same as getting dragged into drama at work or a challenge or whatever. If you can move through, if you can see the oneness in all things, none of it becomes a challenge because that's just a label, right? And I think humans have a very high affinity to label things so that they can categorize.
If you're not labeling it as a challenge, what would you label it as? Or what would you describe, like, because what would a challenge be described as? Is that something that something that is in your way that you feel is a threat to what your expectations are, or what would you how would you describe that then?
Yeah, I don't know, but why does it have to be a threat, and why is it in your way? Like maybe you were meant to experience that in that moment, right? And maybe you were meant to find a way to process that and stay at that same flow conscious state, That's kind of how I look at things now.
Describe them. Yeah, we choose to describe them as problems, but in fact, they're just events that serve us in a different way.
It's just an experience,
yeah.
Right? And like I've had multiple scenarios where I've seen that connectedness and that oneness in all the events of my life that used to bring me pain. I used to experience frustration or pain with them. And I don't see that anymore. I see the beautiful flow of kind of life giving me what I needed to grow and be at this place
why did
now.
Why did those events cause that negative emotional state? Was it because because you felt like you're not going to get what you think you want? Was it because you feel like you deserve to feel miserable, and that's where your emotional home is, and so you go back to that? What do you why do you think that at one point something would happen and you'd feel terrible, whereas today something can happen and it doesn't affect you like that anymore?
It's a good question. That's a great question. Um, I think that's part of life's experience, to teach you that everything that you need is within, and everyone has different starting places and everyone has different experiences. And as you kind of weave through that journey, if you can get to that point of clarity, right? If you can get to that point of kind of I don't know what you would want to call a conscious state, right? Where you feel the flow of life. I think I just see those as what I needed in life to get to that state, right? To recognize that state. And I actually, as I reflect back on them now, this is kind of, I don't know how to describe this in words that well, is I look back and I see the real beauty in those things. Like, I remember one thing that I processed within the last few months is when I went to juvenile detention for a few days when I was a teenager. And it was only a few days, and I had friends that were in for like 6 months, 8 months, 10, and then they would come out and they would be in like boys' homes. And so I knew that it wasn't that bad, but man, that experience took a fucking toll on me, man. Like, I let it take a toll on me, and I would never talk about it. It's not socially acceptable in like a job situation to ever.
How did it take a toll?
Just psychologically, right? Just mentally. It kind of, the energy of like me feeling like I wasn't good enough to stay out of that sort of trouble,
Right.
That I felt like I had kind of failed. I think originally when I was younger, I felt like I had failed other people. I see it now that I was trying to process how I had failed myself. And there was one thing that happened in that experience that was just like a total fucking beacon of light that probably, and I don't know how I would even remember this. This was like over 20 years ago, but something came to me as somebody was asking me about the experience, and it hit me. My friend's mom worked at the juvenile detention center, and she's a sweet older Southern lady. And I remember I was in the room waiting to get like strip searched, and she went running by in the hallway and like saw me and turned around and came back, and she was like, "Justin Palmer, what are you doing in here?" And I was like, "Oh, hey, Miss Ethel, I got in a little trouble." And she was like, she had to run. So she clearly had to be somewhere else, but she mentioned something to me that I see how much it subconsciously shaped everything from that moment forward, which was, she's like, "I don't ever want to see you in here again." And I was like, "Okay, Miss Ethel." And I'm like, man, instead of judging me in that moment,
Yeah.
she just poured out
She
love.
gave you another chance.
Dude,
Yeah.
she just forgave me instantly, right? And this was like one of my best friend's moms. And
Was that the time was that the moment in which you felt like you forgave yourself too? Or did that
when I
come later?
recognized it, yeah. I felt like I had forgiven myself. I mean, I have truly forgiven myself for all things. And I don't have to focus on being in the moment because I live in the moment, right? And I try to plan as little as possible. And there's still things that come up, but my mind is so conditioned to let go now because we've been, this has been a couple year journey to get to this place where I just let go. I'm like, fuck it. It is what this experience is happening so that I can grow from this, right? That experience that you're having right now with this discomfort or this dissatisfaction around these things, just believe that it's happening for a reason. Right.
Yeah, and I think it's happening for me to let go of being the guy that needs that discomfort, because that's the person that it takes for this company to be what it's meant to be, and for me to be the person that I'm meant to be for the family. Is I can't be focused around solving problems and finding problems in order to solve, potentially creating problems just so I can feel useful in solving them. That person is not the kind of person that achieves what I'm planning on doing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And letting go of that, I'm kind of, been practicing on how to let go of these old identities and move into these new states. This has been a whole kind of transformation this past 60 days. And it started with the
Wow.
physical self.
Yeah.
It really
Yeah.
started with the physical self. And I know that's how I know that it's like a long and a lasting and fundamental change to the identity is my body now is different than it has ever been. You know, that this, I feel like I'm in unfamiliar territory, even physically.
That's
You know what I
powerful
mean?
stuff. Yeah.
I have not been walking around at damn near 230 pounds before, and squatting close to 500 pounds and being able to clean 300 pounds in my 40s, and then still being able to run like, close to a 60-second quarter mile. It's unfamiliar territory, but I know that, like, because I'm getting into really tip top physical shape, for which is for me, those are good numbers for me. There's athletes out there, of course, that are in that may think otherwise, but that's good place for me.
Yeah.
Being in unfamiliar territory there, is informing me that that there's a new version of me that's emerging out of this. That's really like that the old me couldn't touch. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and
And the
now what
crazy
I'm
thing
capable of
is,
doing.
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
it's just kind of, it just to kind of like wrap that thought up, is as soon as you do that, you start thinking, well, I never thought that I would be able to do that. And well, if I can do that, then all this other stuff that I can do that too. So it's just one of those things that makes you convinced that now you have set a new bar about what you're capable of doing, because physically, your capabilities have reached kind of new territory.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's powerful stuff, man. It's stepping into that fully is like, you see that there are no bars, right? There's no fucking rules.
Right.
There's just pure creation. And when you let go, you allow that creation to constantly flow, because you're not stuck at any moment or any time. Like, nothing sticks with you. And even if it does, it was meant to teach you to let go more or find that next level or whatever it is, right? It's that's pretty beautiful. I have to say, we've been having these conversations for years now, right? And I'm super thankful that we're recording this type of stuff and putting it out there, because I think it's helpful for anyone who's ready to listen, or even if they're not, it may be helpful for them to remember at some point. But fuck, man, what an epic transformation you have made to get even just here, right? Is like that it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, and for the first time in 5 years, I can say that I'm proud of myself for like what the past 90 days has really produced. I would say that I'm not sure that I could have said that about anything in the past 5 years. And when it comes specifically to, like, professional, of course I got a beautiful family, and that's fantastic. But but when 10 years ago, I just told Maggie, when I ripped a 250-pound power clean today, I haven't even loaded that kind of weight on a bar in 10 years with the intent to power clean it, you know? And even then I would have found it really at the upper limit of what I'm capable of doing. And to think 10 years later, to now think that I'm just as strong as I was 10 years ago. That's like, it kind of blows up all of your previous limitations, which is like, well, fuck, maybe, maybe there's a guy inside that can clean 300, 350, like pure power, which would put me like in NFL, tight end category of power. And that's not that's not out of reach now at least in my mind. And also, maybe my company, instead of doing 300,000 a year, is going to do 30 million. Maybe that's not out of reach either. So, it's just one of those things where, you see a little success and just recalibrating the entire system and saying, man, you know what? I can do whatever I want, and I can turn this into whatever I want it to be. Because I don't have things that are in my way, namely my own excuses,
By namely,
because
only your own excuses,
Right. Or creating the reasoning of why it's not working preemptively so I can, underperform at it by not trying. That's how people really sabotage themselves, is by sabotage is like creating a scenario where they can't succeed and then convince themselves that outcome they wanted was not a possible thing,
Totally.
Totally. You know what I mean? Is that, why did your company not do 10 million bucks? Is that, it was not a possible option, when in fact you made it not possible because you decided that early so you wouldn't, So I think that now, being over that and starting to really think about, man, and some of our investors in the company early asked us this question: why are you thinking about a $3 million sale instead of a $50 million sale? And I didn't have a great answer. And now I'm thinking, well, why the fuck would I why would I sell it at 3 million? We're going to take it to, you know what I mean? And some of that is, it happened because the market believed in us also too. But I think it mostly happened because now I believe in myself, and I believe in the actions that we have done, that those are the right ones. And it was this push-pull that kind of changed us as individuals. There's a fantastic quote by Russell Brunson, of all people, who says the company that you're trying to build will become what it is meant to be when you become the person that you are meant to be to run it. And that to me is the evolution, is that once you become the person, then the company will become the thing.
Yeah.
So, and now I feel like I am the person to run a company, that the $3 million company out of the garage that has a $15 million valuation. And now that I'm that person, the company is going to become that thing. So that's the set of decisions that has really happened in the past month, to be honest. Prior to that month, I still had a bunch of questions in my head about where this is all going. And now and part of this conversation too is help me get some clarity on, I know where it's going now. It's going exactly where I say it's going to go. And
that's right.
And it's gonna do that because I'm becoming the kind of person that can create the result.
Yeah.
So
that's beautiful, man.
Yeah. And
that, appreciate that.
I could have said it before, but I'm convinced of it today,
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not coming from a place of ego or arrogance, because I've been that guy too. And that ego and arrogance comes out of insecurity and fear. It comes out of a place of confidently owning the space, you know, drawing a line in the sand and owning that and saying that, hey, you know what? I'm taking ownership, for better or for worse, that this is the box that I own and I am the expert within it. And that's something that actually Sean Callaghy coached me about randomly. Shout out to Sean, and saying that, hey, you at the very least, what you should do is define the box in which you own and own it, you know, and that and I think that that's kind of the real purpose of today's you know, the things that are happening today is for me to, you know, develop into that person who really owns my my patch, you know, and puts a stake in the ground and says, okay, you know what, this is who I am now, and this is what we're doing. So so yeah, I mean, 2021 is going to be exciting, and really at the core of it, both companies that we've got today that are rapidly growing are really built around the mission of improving the quality of life for both kids and people that are trying to return to work around COVID. And that mission deserves 100% of the both of us kind of working and going through these actions. And you know, it's really a remarkable time. I just, you know, and I'm glad it's happened now. But in some ways, I just wish it would have happened earlier. You know, because then I feel like I could have done more.
Dude,
but it took the time that it took the time that it took.
2020 is about making peace. 2021 is about service, man. I believe that. And I do have to run because I got a little one that's got to get scooped up.
You do your thing, man. Give me a call sometime this week.
Awesome.
Let's catch up offline.
Yeah, dude, this was awesome. Thank you, man.
It's been too long. Thanks, brother.
It has been.
Talk soon.
Later, bro.
See ya.